Hello grade 8, how are you today? In this video we are going to take square roots, which is chapter 4 in your ebooks. Okay, actually it's composed of many objectives, but in this video we will discuss together how to define a square root. We will take together what do we mean by square root and identify square roots of a perfect square. Okay, so at the beginning we will just refresh our memories about what do you mean by squares. Okay, so let's start here. Two square, what do you mean by two square, for example, or x square or y square? Okay, so we will remember together. Okay, what do you mean by squares? Okay, or square of a number. Yani if you say just x square, y squared, z squared, which is raised to a power of 2, what do you mean by it? It means that it is equal to x times itself 2 times. Y squared, it is y times y 2 times. Y times itself. Z squared, it is z times itself. Z times z. If we say 4 squared, which is equal to 4 multiplied by itself, 4 times 4, which is 16, and so on. Okay, so look at this, 2 power 2. It means it's equal to 2 times 2, which is equal to 4. Okay, negative 2 squared is equal to negative 2 times itself, negative 2, and also it is equal to 4. Okay, so we got here two answers of 2 squared and of negative 2 squared, which are the same. Okay, let's go to another example. 5 squared is equal 5 times itself, so it's equal to 25. Negative 5 squared is equal negative 5 times negative 5, and also it's equal to 25. Okay, why it's equal to 25? Since 5 times 5 it's 25, negative 5 times negative 5, negative times negative positive, 5 times 5, 25, so we got here 25. Okay, what do you notice here? We notice that the square of any number, either it is positive or a negative number, okay, the answer is always positive. دايما بيكون الانسر positive when we make a number square. Okay, so we'll multiply it by itself 2 times, its answer should be positive. This is why, this is because negative times negative is equal to positive. Yeah, negative 2 times negative 2, it is 4. Negative 5 times negative 5, it is 25. Negative 6 times negative 6, it is positive 36, and so on. Okay, fine. Now let's write the following numbers as a perfect squares. Okay, and we will now start discussing what do we mean by perfect squares. First, look at these numbers. 25, it is 5 squared. 81, it is 9 squared. 9 times 9, 81. 16 is 4 times 4, 4 squared. 100, it's 10 times 10, which is 10 squared. Okay, 64 is 8 times 8, which is 8 squared. 225, it's 15 squared. Okay, 36, it is 6 times 6, which is 6 squared. 49 is 7 times 7, which is 7 squared, and so on. I think the first slide is clear. So after we wrote all this, we wrote in the previous slide that all the numbers of perfect squares, all these numbers as perfect squares, type. Can we write 18 as a perfect square? What do we mean? We mean that, can you find a number which you make it square to get 18? Is there a number if you make it square, you get 18. Okay, again, if you multiply it by itself, you get 18. The answer is no. There is no any number when you make it square, you get 18. So 18 is not a perfect square. Okay, so what do you mean by perfect square now? Perfect square is a number that comes from the square of another number. As 25, it is 5 squared. 81 is 9 squared. 16 is 4 squared. All those numbers are called perfect squares. 64, 225, 100, 49, 36, 4. All these numbers are perfect squares. Okay? Right. Another question, can we write 49 as a perfect square? Yani, can you write 49? Can you find a number if you make it square, you get 49? Yes, there is 7. Why? Then we know already that 7 times 7 is equal to what? Is equal to 81. Okay? So 7 squared equal 8 equal 49. Sorry, 49. So 49 is called a perfect square. Okay? So this is second slide. I think it's clear. Okay? Right. Now what do you mean by square root? Okay? So we know what to mean by square. Square, it means you make a number square to get another number, as 2 square, 3 square, 4 square, 16, 5 square, 25. Okay? What do you mean by square root? Right. A being a positive number, sorry, there exists a number whose square is A. Okay? This number is called the square root of A. We will explain what do mean by all these Chinese words. Okay, right. Now look at this. We have this symbol which is called radical. Okay, هذا السيمبل بنسميه radical. Okay, and the one who's inside is called radicand. We'll take examples to explain how it's going on. Okay, so the radical sign is this one. You make just like V and then a horizontal line, and the number that's inside here, whatever it is, it's called the radicand. Okay, so this symbol is called radical. Okay, and the one who's inside is called the radicand. In this case, it's written like this: radical A. Okay, fine. In such a way, radical A squared is equal to A, where A is a positive or 0. Okay, radical A, all of its squared, is also equal to A, where A is greater or equal to 0. A is positive. Let's take examples, it's better. Fine. Radical 5 squared is equal to 5. Radical 11 squared is equal to 11. Okay, the radical is the sign of the square root. So when we say square root, it means we mean radical. Okay, so the square root is the radical. Okay, we will discuss this by numbers and more examples in the second slide. Okay, radical 5 squared equal 5. Radical 11 squared equal 11. Radical 12 squared equal 12. Radical 7 squared equal 7, and so on. So radical, any number squared, it should be equal to the same number. And radical A squared is equal to what? Is equal to A. This is the first information that you need to write it in your notebooks. So it is radical A squared is equal to A, where A is a positive or 0 number. Okay, right. The second formula that you need to write it is radical A. When you make all of it square, okay, this formula, you'll get a. Okay, for example, radical 3 all of its square is equal to 3. Radical 7 all of its square is equal to 7. What do you mean by all of its square? All of its square, and it means that the square is for all the radical 3. All of it, I make it square. So it's equal to 3. Radical 5, all of its square is equal to 5. Radical 12, all of its square is equal to 12. Radical 7, all of its square is equal to 7. Radical 100, all of its square is equal to 100. Radical 10, all of its square is equal to 10. So as we have seen here, that radical 12 squared is equal to 12. Here the square is only for the 12. And radical 12, all of its square is equal also to 12. So they are equal to each other. Okay? So these two formulas, you need to memorize them very well. Write them in your notebook or on your copybook, and we need to use them after in the next slides. I think it's clear. Let's go to the next slide. It's very important to know that radical 1 is equal to 1. Okay? Radical 1 is equal to 1. Let me make it smaller a little bit. Okay? So this is a formula. You need to memorize it well. Okay? And write also radical 0 is equal to 0. So these two formulas, you need to memorize them also very well. So till now we have 4 formulas. Okay? So radical 1 equal to 1 and radical 0 equal to 0. Right. Can we talk about radical negative 5? Yani can we say radical negative 5? No. Radical negative 9? No. Radical negative 20? Radical negative 100? Okay? All are, or all never exist. Okay? So radical minus a does not exist, or it's a wrong answer, a wrong number. Okay? So we couldn't write radical negative 5 or radical negative 7 or radical negative 100. Okay? All does not exist. Okay? Why? لأنه by definition of the square root, the radicand which is inside here, مش قبل شوي نحن قلنا the one who's inside is called the radicand. The radicand should be positive or 0. Okay? So you can say, you can talk about radical 5, you can talk about radical 7, you can talk about radical 20, you can talk about radical 100. You may find them answers for this, but you couldn't say radical minus 5 or radical minus 7 or radical minus 20. All does not exist. So we couldn't write radical minus 100 also. Okay, right. But we can say minus radical a squared. نحن we took in the previous part that radical a squared is equal to what? Is equal to a. But radical minus radical a squared is equal to minus a. Okay? Yani here we can talk about this. Minus radical a squared is equal to minus a. When the negative sign is outside the radical, it's okay and there is no problem. Okay, so no problem if we write minus radical 5 squared. Okay, so minus outside the radical, so it's okay. It doesn't affect anything. Okay, but radical minus 5 squared is not. Okay, so radical 5 squared, I know that radical 5 squared is equal to 5 from the previous part, which is here. Radical 5 squared is equal to 5. It is here. Okay. And negative radical 5 squared is equal to negative. So I keep the negative side outside. Radical 5 squared is equal to 5. Finished. That's it. Okay. So I can talk about radical 7 squared equal minus radical 7. Minus 7. Okay, negative radical 10 squared equal negative 10, and so on. Negative radical 13 squared equal negative 13. Negative radical 156 squared equal negative 156, and so on. You can choose any number and make it square, it will be the same, but the negative side is outside the radical, so it's okay and there is no problem, it's fine. Okay, but the thing that's not fine is to write radical minus 5 squared. This does not exist. Radical minus 13 squared does not exist. And I have negative, okay? And so on, like that. Good? Okay. So I think this is also clear. We will take now in the next slide more and more examples to understand the lesson very well. Square roots and out of perfect squares. What do you mean by square roots of perfect squares? Okay, before we talk about this, let's look at this table and at this table. Okay, look at this table first. Let me make it bigger a little bit, see it well. Okay, start by the first one. We said from the beginning that perfect squares are numbers. When you make square, يعني مثلا 1 square equal 1, 1 is a perfect square. 2 squared equal 4, 4 is a perfect square. 3 squared equal 9, 9 is a perfect square. 4 squared equal 16 16 is a perfect square. 25 it's 5 square. 36 it's 6 square. You must memorize these numbers. Okay, as you memorize the multiplication table in grades 4 and 5 and 6. Okay, now in grade 8 you must memorize as you can this table. 64 is 8 times 8, 8 squared. 81 is 9 squared. 100 is 10 squared. 11 squared equal 121. All these numbers are sufficient to memorize this. Okay, so when you hear by 36, 36, you must say that it is equal to 6 squared. 64 is 8 squared. 81 is 9 squared. So you must memorize the square of the numbers. Okay, fine. Now we will talk something about the squares. Okay, we must talk about squares. Let's remember radical 1 squared. What does it equal? It's equal to 1. We know it from the previous part, from this formula. Radical a squared is equal to a, right? Okay, so let me bring it here. Okay, I couldn't bring it. Anyway, radical 2 squared, what does it equal? It's equal to 2, right? Radical 3 squared, what does it equal? It's equal to 3. Radical 4 squared, it's equal to 4. Radical 5 squared is equal to 5. From where I'm getting this? I'm getting this from this slide here. Radical 11 squared, 11. Radical 12 squared is 12. Radical 7 squared is 7. Okay, we took it before by this formula. Okay, so let's continue. Radical 6 squared is equal to 6, and so on. Okay, radical 7 squared is equal to 7, radical 8 squared is equal to 8, and so on. Okay, fine. I'll compare now radical 1 squared. Okay, radical 1 squared. What could we write instead of 1 squared? Should we write 1? Let me write it in blue. We may write it 1 like this. 1 squared equal 1, and radical 1 squared. 1 squared is equal to 1, so radical 1 equal 1, it's okay. Right. Go to the next one. 2 squared. What could we write instead of 2 squared? We should write 4. So we erase this and we just write 4. So radical 4 equal 2. Okay, so let's go on. Radical 3 squared. What does 3 squared equal? 9. So radical 3 squared is equal to 9. So we replace 3 squared by 9. So this is fine. 4 squared. What does 4 squared equal? 16. So we replace 4 squared by what? By 16. يعني radical 16 equal to 4. Again, we continue. 5 squared. What does radical 5 squared equal? Equal 5. But what does 5 squared equal? 5 squared is equal to 25. So we replace it by 25. Like, what does 6 squared equal? 36. فينا 36. So we may replace 6 squared by what? By 36. So it means that radical 1 equal to 1, radical 4 equal to 2, radical 9 is equal to 3, radical 16 equal to 4, radical 25 equal to 5. So when you want to find the square root of a number, okay, when you want to write the square root of a number out of perfect squares, okay, so you must search about the root. Okay, يعني for example, radical 9, okay, radical 9. 9, what's the root of 9? يعني it means that what's the number that you make it square to get 9? It is 3. So it's equal to 3. What is the square root of 16? يعني what's the number that you make it square to get 16? It's equal to 4. So if you look at this and this at the same time, for example, okay, look at this one, 4 squared equals 16, and look at this, radical 16 equal to 4. 3 squared equal to 9, radical 9 equal to 3. What do you notice here? What do you notice here? 2 squared equal to 4, يعني radical 4 equal to 2. What do you notice here? We notice that the square, okay, and the square root are opposite to each others. Okay, if I make 2 square, I get 4. If I make square root of 4, I get 2. If I make 3 squared, I get 9. And if I make square root of 9, I get 3. If I make 7 squared, I get 49. Okay, and if I make radical 49, I get 7. Okay, so they are opposite to each others. This is what we mean by square roots of perfect squares. يعني just we are doing here square roots of these numbers اللي هن perfect squares. اللي هن مين is perfect squares? The perfect squares are those numbers that I marked them by blue. Okay, those numbers are perfect squares. Okay, so the square root of 1 is equal to 1. The square root of 4 is equal to 2. The square root of 9 is equal to 3. And so on. The square root of 16 is equal to 4. So let me bring them beside each others. I think it will be more clear if you bring them about beside each others. Look at this. They are here. I want to make it bigger a little bit. So just compare them a little bit. Okay, if you compare them, 1 squared is equal to 1, but radical 1 is equal to 1. 2 squared is equal to 4, so radical 4 is equal to 2. 3 squared equal to 9, radical 9 equal to 3. So we are doing here the square roots, okay? We are finding the square roots of the perfect squares, okay? Those are the perfect squares. 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81. You must memorize this very well. Okay, عجقناها شوي, sorry. So this is our lesson today. We will take just one more slide, just some rules, okay, about square rules, and we will finish. Okay, طيب. Some rules: A times radical B is equal to A radical B. يعني نحن من قبل كنا ناخذ مثلا x times y. Instead of writing x times y, we write xy. Instead of writing 3 times x squared مثلا نكتب 3x squared like this. Okay. هلا here, instead of writing 3 times radical 7, we write 3 radical 7. It's just يعني 3 بنخليها outside the radical. يعني 3, it's not multiplied by 7. Okay. يعني when we write 3 times radical 7, we keep it 3 radical 7. يعني we keep 3 outside the radical multiplied by radical 7. So 3 radical 7. Okay, we couldn't write 3 times 7. We couldn't multiply a number without radical by a number inside the radical. Okay, so just we write 3 times radical 7 is equal to 3 radical 7. But in what case we multiply the numbers inside? It's in this case. Radical A times radical B is equal to what? The radical A times B. A is inside the radical. B is inside the radical. So we combine this radical and this radical by one big radical, and we multiply A times B. So radical A times radical B, it's radical A times B. For example, radical 5 times radical 7. So look at this. 5 is under the radical, 7 is under or inside the radical. So we combine by one radical the two radicals, and we multiply 5 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35. Okay? Right. If we apply this, but by radical A times radical A. So what does radical A times radical A mean? It means that it is equal to radical A times A. Okay? Radical A times A, yani radical A squared. And we know that from previous part that radical A squared is equal to A. Let's take an example with numbers. Radical 5 times radical 5. What does it equal? Radical 5 times radical 5. It is equal radical 5 times 5. Like 5 times 5 هي 5 squared. So it is equal radical 5 squared. And I already know that 5 squared is equal to what? Radical 5 squared is equal to 5. Okay? ناخد another example here. Radical 7 times radical 7. Right, radical 7 times radical 7, it is radical 7 times 7. So I combine the radical in one radical, and I multiplied 7 times 7 by using this rule. So it is equal radical 7 all of its squared, and I already know that radical 7 squared is equal to 7. Okay, ناخد another example. Radical 13 multiplied by radical 13. So directly you will say that it's 13. So it's radical 13 squared, so it's equal to 13. Radical 15 times radical 15, it is equal to 15. Directly you may write it 15. Okay. Number 4, radical A over radical B. It is equal to radical A over B. So it's the same as multiplication. We combine this radical and this radical by one long or big radical, and we write A over B. Okay, so radical 15 over radical 6, for example, it is equal to radical 15 over 6. يعني 15 over 6, if you simplify, you will get radical 5 over 2. One more example from my side. For example, radical, let's say 20 over radical 5. If you want to simplify this, it will be equal radical, one big radical, 20 over 5. Right, 20 over 5, if you divide 20 by 5, you get 4. Radical 4. Right, is 4 a perfect square? Yes, it is a perfect square. So it is equal to, I know that radical 4 equal to, from where? From here. Radical 4 is equal to 2. Why? لأنه 2 squared equal to 4. Okay. One more and the last example for today is radical 11 over radical 11, for example. So it's equal radical 11 over 11. Type 11 over 11, it's 1. So it's radical 1. And I already know from previous part that radical 1 is equal to 1. Right. Let's start now the new idea. So be careful. When adding and subtracting square roots. Okay, it's very similar to adding and subtracting like terms. Okay, so just you add the like term of x. For example, 5x plus 4x. What is the like term here? X. Okay, x is the like term. So 4x plus 5x or 5x plus 4x is equal to 9x. Good? Okay. Fine. When you have 5 radical 3 plus 4 radical 3, for example. Okay. So you will suppose that radical 3 and radical 3, okay, are the like terms. Yani you will suppose that the radical 3 is x and the radical 3 is x. So 5 plus 4, 9. So 9 radical 3. Yani you will suppose that the radical 3 is x. It's the same as you are saying 5x plus 4x, it's 9x. 5 radical 3 plus 4 radical 3 equal 9 radical 3. We will focus on this idea today. Okay, and it's very, very, very important. Okay. So let me write some examples before we start in the written examples. Let's say radical 3 plus radical 3. How could you add radical 3 plus radical 3? Okay, so is it equal radical 3 plus 3? I want you to try in your calculators. If you started using calculators, press on the left side radical 3 plus radical 3 and write equal. And then press AC and then press radical 3 plus 3 and write equal. It will not give you the same answer. Okay? So radical 3 plus radical 3 is not equal to radical 3 plus 3. So how could you add? You will add it like this. Radical 3 plus radical 3. You'll suppose that the radical 3 is x. So if I asked you now, x plus x, your answer will be 2x, of course. Apple plus apple, 2 apples. X plus x, 2x. Radical 3 plus radical 3 is 2 radical 3. That's it. Another example, I write it on the right side. Radical 2 plus, for example, 5 radical 2. What the answer will be? So it's the same as x plus 5x. It is 6x. Okay? And 1x plus 5x is 6x. Radical 2 plus 5 radical 2. يعني it's the same as I'm saying 1 radical 2 plus 5 radical 2. Radical 2 is the common here. Okay, sorry, I erased it all. I used different color. Okay, so radical 2 plus 5 radical 2 is equal to 6 radical 2. Radical 2 is the same here, the common as 5x plus x, it's 6x. The like term, radical 2 plus 5 radical 2 equals 6 radical 2. That's it. Okay, so I suppose now when I ask a question, most of you will answer radical 11 or 2 radical 11 plus 7 radical 11. What the answer will be? It is 2 plus 7, 9 radical 11. And everything is fine till now. So let's take some examples. 7 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2. With minus, it's the same. So 7 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2. We will suppose that the radical 2 is the apple here or the x. So 7x minus 3x. 7 minus 3 is 4 radical 2 only. So it's 4 radical 2. شفتوا الidea؟ كتير سهلة. 11 radical 13 minus 20 radical 13 plus 9 radical 13 equal 11 minus 20 plus 9. Okay, so you add all together 11 minus 20 plus 9, it is equal to 0. So 0 radical 13 is equal to 0, and it's done. Okay, so I'll continue by the next one. 3 radical 5 minus 2 radical 3 plus 7 radical 5 minus 10 radical 3. Okay, look at this. This one is the same as you are saying 3x minus 2y plus 7x minus 10y. Yani you will suppose that radical 5 is x and radical 3 is y. So if I ask you now to simplify this, you will say that 3x and 7x are like terms. Remember like terms? Like terms that have the same variable? We took them at the beginning of the year and last year also. So 3x plus 7x, it's 10x. Okay, so it is 10x. Negative 2y minus 10y. So negative 2y minus 10y is equal to negative 12y. Okay, it's equal to negative 12y. It's the same here. Okay, so it's the same idea here. It is like this. So 3 radical 5 plus 7 radical 5, they are like terms, so it's 10 radical 5. Okay, and also 2 radical 3, this one, oh, I erased it. Okay, anyway, let me write it like this. 2 radical 3 minus 2 radical 3 minus 10 radical 3, it is minus 12 radical 3, and it's done. Okay, يعني انت no need to write all this, but just hey, no need to write this one. Okay, but only I'm explaining it here. So radical a plus radical a, so it is the same as x plus x equal to x. So radical a plus radical a equal 2 radical a. Okay, 3 radical a plus 4 radical b minus 2 radical a plus 9 radical b. So this one, 4 radical b and 9 radical b are like terms. 3 radical a and 2 radical a are like terms. So 3 radical a minus 2 radical a, it is radical a. And also 4 radical b minus 9 radical b, it's minus 5 radical b, and it's done. Okay, that's it. Right, let's perform this one. Sorry. 2 minus radical 3 multiplied by 2 plus radical 3. Also, remember, if I asked you before to perform this one, 2 minus x times 2 plus x. So let's remember from algebra, how would you do it? You multiply 2 by 2, it is 4, and then you multiply 2 by x, it is 2x, and then you multiply negative x by 2, it's minus 2x, and then you multiply negative x times positive x, so negative x squared. That if in algebra. Okay, same here, but instead of x we wrote radical 3. So 2 times radical 3, it is 2 times 2, sorry, 2 times 2, it is 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 2 squared. Oh, you may write it 4 directly. 2 times radical 3, it's 2 radical 3. Then negative radical 3 times 2, it's negative 2 radical 3 again. And negative radical 3 times positive radical 3, negative times negative, positive, negative. Radical 3 times radical 3 is radical 3 squared as x squared. Okay, so let's simplify here. Let's check what's going here, or how there's something, anything to simplify. 2 radical 3 minus 2 radical 3 is 0. Okay, and 2 square is 4. And radical 3 all of its square, remember, قلناها from 5 minutes. Radical 3 all of its square is equal to what? 3. So 4 minus 3. Okay, this is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, let me continue. So if you didn't understand this one, of course, you'll understand it more when I explain number 7. Focus well to understand. Radical 11 minus 5 into radical 11 plus 5. How could we do it? We do radical 11 times radical 11. So let me do it here. Forget this one. Radical 11 times radical 11. It's radical 11 squared. Radical 11 times 5. It's 5 radical 11. Minus 5 times radical 11. It's minus 5 radical 11. And minus 5 times 5. It's minus 25. Okay, and then simplify. So let me simplify here. Now 5 radical 11 minus 5 radical 11 is cancelled. Radical 11 all of its square is equal to 11, remember, minus 25, so I write it like this, and calculate at the end it will be negative 14, and that's it. This is the answer. Okay, let me go to more and more examples. Yeah, 5 radical 6 minus 19 radical 6 plus 6 radical 6. How could you do it? Equal 5 radical 6 minus 19 radical 6 plus 6 or plus radical 6. 5 minus 19, it is negative 14, plus 1, it's negative 13. So negative 13 radical 6. Okay? 2 radical 3 minus 5 radical 2 plus 9 radical 3 plus 7 radical 2. So how could you do it? So it's equal. 2 radical 3 plus 9 radical 3, it is 11 radical 3. Okay? 5 radical 2 or negative 5 radical 2 plus 7 radical 2. Okay? It is equal to 2. Yani negative 5 plus 7 is 2. So plus 2 radical 2. Can I do anything more? No. It's same as 11x plus 2y. So you can't do anything more. You can't say it's 13x or 13y. Okay? So we keep it like that. Same as here. We keep it like that. Couldn't do anything more. Yeah, so we continue. Here, 4 radical x minus 3 radical x plus 21 radical x minus 10 radical x. أول شيء all of them are like terms. Why? لأنه I have radical x, radical x, radical x, radical x. Okay? So I add the coefficients 4 minus 3 plus 21 minus 10. So let's start adding here. So it will be 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 plus 21 is 22. 22 minus 10 is 12. So it's 12 radical x. Follow me by calculations. Okay, so I'm not making mistake. Anyway, I repeat it. I usually repeat it. So 4 minus 3 is 1. Plus 21 is 22. Minus 10 it is 12. Good? Okay, let me go with the next one. Negative 13 radical 8 plus 4 radical b plus 3 radical 8 plus 9 radical b. Oh, okay. So I have the negative 13 radical a plus 3 radical a all together and 4 radical b and 9 radical b together. So let's do the first two. I have here minus 3 radical a plus 3 radical a. It is negative 10 radical a. You may do it like this. خلاص, they have finished. They have finished from this, so you may cross them. 4 radical b plus 9 radical b, so it's 13 radical b, and it's done. Couldn't do anything else. Okay. Radical 7 minus 3 into radical 7 plus 3. Okay, so let's do them together. Radical 7 times radical 7, it's equal to radical 7 squared. Radical 7 times 3, it is 3 radical 7. Negative 3 times radical 7, it's minus 3 radical 7. And minus 3 times 3, it's minus 9. Equal, yalla, let's cross if there is anything to be crossed. 3 radical 7 minus 3 radical 7 cancelled. Type radical 7 all of its square is equal to 7. And minus 9 we copy it, so the answer will be negative 2. I'm writing it here in one line, there is no space. Okay. Look at this one. 3 into 1 minus radical 5 plus 2 radical 5 into 1 plus radical 5. It feels complicated, but when we solve it, you will see that it's not too complicated. It's just advanced, more advanced, but it's not very hard. So let's start. So here I'll do first 3 times 1, 3 times, okay. So 3 times 1, 3. 3 times minus radical 5 minus 3 radical 5. Right. Let's see what's going here. Plus 2 radical 5 times 1, so I write plus 2 radical 5. Plus 2 radical 5 times radical 5, so it is plus 2 radical 5 times radical 5, so 2 radical 5 squared. Okay, it's the same as 2x times x, so it's 2x squared. So 2 radical 5 times radical 5 is 2 radical 5 squared. Here the square is only for the radical 5. Okay, same as we have done here. Radical 7 times radical 7 صارت radical 7 squared بس هون في 2 بس it's radical 5 squared. Okay, so let's see what will happen. So 3 minus 3 radical 5 plus 2 radical 5 plus 2 radical 5 squared 2 times. Okay, what is radical 5 squared here? كلها radical 5 all of its square مش هي 5, so it's 5. Okay, see what's happened. 2 into radical 5 squared. Radical 5 squared is 5. 2 times 5, now we write it 10. So it's 3 minus 3 radical 5 plus 2 radical 5. plus 2 times 5, 10, and it's equal, so let's simplify it now. 3 plus 10 is 13, so I add 3 and 10, okay, and then add again this one and this one. So negative 3 radical 5 plus 2 radical 5, so it will be minus 1 radical 5, so minus radical 5, okay, and it's done. Now the last one, when we do the live session, maybe you'll ask me about it, okay, or when you watch the video and you have any question, you may ask me via WhatsApp, but I prefer on Zoom live لأنه بيكون في contact together, okay. The last idea today is to compare square roots. How to compare square roots. Until now I have only one more idea, one new idea اللي هي هيدا they like terms. هلا the last idea this lesson today is compare square roots. How to compare square roots. شو يعني compare square roots؟ يعني when I give you for example radical 7 and radical 11 وبيجي بقول لك أنا compare. شو يعني؟ يعني which one is greater? Which one is less than the other? Which one is greater than the other? Okay? طيب هون there are two ways. واحدة فيهم على calculator which is very easy, and we should not use calculator. يعني هون أنا في عندي two ways. واحدة على calculator but يعني مش دايما أنا بستعمل calculator, okay? And the other one using the math way أو الway اللي موجودة معنا that we need to use it. You must use it, okay? يلي هي هاي. Okay? So what should you do here? أول شيء to compare. What should you do? Okay. Square both sides. Compare the squared numbers. Compare the original numbers. How? أول شيء مثلا I have يعني we couldn't understand unless from the examples. Radical 7 and radical 11. First compare both sides. Square both sides. يعني make square of radical 7, make square of radical 11. So when you make square of radical 7, it will be radical 7 squared like this. And when you make radical 11, all of its square also it will be like that. But calculate radical 7 square, it will be 7. Remember, we took it. Radical 11, all of its square, it will be 11. Also, we took it. But which one is greater, 7 or 11? 11 is greater, 7 is less. So we write less than here. And then, since 7 is less than 11, so radical 7 is less than radical 11, and we wrote it here. So for example, 2 radical 5 and 4. 2 radical 5 and 4. We'll take more examples now here. Square both sides. So 2 radical 5 squares, 4 squared. So we square both sides here and here. Fine. 2 radical 5 all of its square. What it will be? 2 radical 5 all of its square. So I'll explain here some out a little bit. When I make 2 radical 5 all of it squared. Okay? What does this mean? This means that it is 2 squared times radical 5 squared. Why? I know from before that xy all of its square is equal to x squared y squared. I distribute the powers here. We took it in grade 7. Okay, same as here. So 2 squared times radical 5 squared. 2 squared is 4. Radical 5 squared is 5. So for this reason, we wrote it 4 times 5. Okay, and no need to memorize this. No need to use this also. You may directly write the answer. 2 squared is 4. Radical 5, when you make it squared, you will get 5. Not 25, it is 5. 2 times 2 is 4. Radical 5 times radical 5, it's 5. And we compare, we square the right side, which is 4 squared 16. 4 times 5, 20. And here 16, this is greater. Since 20 is greater than 16, so this is greater than this. Okay? Like if I ask you now, 2 radical 3 and 3 radical 2, which one is greater? Or maybe they are equal, I don't know. So let's do squaring both sides first. So we square 2 radical 3 and we square 3 radical 2. And we calculate 4 times radical 3 square is 3. 3, 9, 3 squared is 9 times radical 2 squared is 2. Okay? 4 times 3, 12. 9 times 2, 18. This is greater, so this is greater. Done. That's it. Okay? This is everything in our lesson. So I'll make a conclusion now. Radical A, all of its squared equal A. Don't forget, radical A, all of its squared equal A. Radical A squared equal A. Radical minus A does not exist. And radical A times B is radical A is A radical B. A times radical B is A radical B. A radical A times radical B is radical A times B. Radical A times radical A is A.